I say, what shall I do with all these mines? I have so many they're practically falling from my hands. Say what?
Oh dear me! Are those 4 red and 4 green mines? Oh, I do say this looks like my kind of party. Let's get jiggy with it.
Hey, we're the masters of boredom, where nothing's off the table. And this is our review of Splendor.
Hey kids, do you like exploiting people and countries? Do you like blood diamonds? Well boy howdy, do I have the game for you! Splendor's a game about buying gems and gem mines to mine gems and impress people who like gems and afterwards watch gem!
You mean that movie that was so bad I had to have my memory erased?
No, there is no movie, It doesn't exist. Stop talking about it.
Splendor's an evolving math puzzle. You accrue chips to buy resources, which you then use to buy better resources, and so on, until you have more resources than anybody else. Then, the wealthiest, most miserable people you've ever met in your life will come and visit you. Like this guy, who just showed up to a party and realized someone has a bigger, furrier hat than he does. Or this guy, who just finished clasping his armor and realized he has to pee. Or this guy, who sailed for India and almost hit New Jersey. This guy, who just married his 4th wife and realized she's a vegan. This guy might actually be the only one who's smiling in this whole deck of nobles, and we think that's because he caused the medieval version of an Amber Alert. You get the idea. Money doesn't necessarily buy happiness.
The game is super simple to set up. It is easy to teach, and games typically take less than a half an hour. This is streamlined design. Even the turns are designed to be quick. You only get one action. But your turns will be inevitably lengthened by the anguish that comes over deciding what move to take. I like to call this game a living puzzle, and while it's ostensibly true with 2 players, it is most definitely not fake news when there are 4, because the playing field mutates quickly.
Splendor may be simple, but it's still a very challenging game since you only get 1 action per turn. 12 cards to choose from and an ever-dwindling pile of chips to acquire them with. Do you stock up on chips? Do you invest in cheap mines? Do you reserve a card because you think your opponent is gunning for it? You have to take into account the nobles and how they affect your strategy, and you have to hope that the high-end cards are still there when you have the gems to afford them.
I have tried several strategies, and the one that seems to work the best for me is timing that jump from level 1 to level 2, and then the jump from level 2 to level 3. Sometimes the nobles factor in. Sometimes they don't. It all depends on what comes into play and what's still there on your turn. Now, in most cases, a single working strategy would be a downside. After all, in any game, an overpowered strategy is going to take the fun away. But in this case, it still works because the game forces you to stay flexible no matter what strategy you choose. Because some games, your opponent, whether they mean to or not, are going to rock block you from every card you want.
Splendor also evolves depending on the number of players you have, their advantages and disadvantages for any player count. For example, if you only have 1 opponent, it's much easier to discern their strategy, and therefore obstruct it. The disadvantage is that the board moves very slowly. If you don't like the cards that are out, you may have to buy some just to change it. But with 3 or 4 players, that turnover is much more fluid. Sometimes that presents opportunities, other times the gem mine you've been eyeing up won't be there when your turn comes around again. But it's much harder to discern everyone else's strategy, and with all the variables, you can't possibly rock block everyone.
One thing I wanted to mention was the game's feel. Strangely, although it's probably due to the mental pressure of the ever-changing puzzle, this game feels less social than other games we enjoy. There's not a lot of talking, and what talking there is tends to be about our plans or griping about said plans being busted. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it doesn't negatively affect the game at all. But if you're looking for something to laugh and joke over with your friends, this might not be it.
Diamonds are serious business. That's not to say the game isn't a blast. We love bringing Splendor to the table, especially with all the high quality components. The artwork is irrelevant to the gameplay, but it adds ambience to the experience. The cards are a nice glossy texture, they're easy to read, and they're easier to shuffle than the noble tiles full of miserable people. Except for Creepy Guy. He slept with everybody.
And these chips! They're just simple poker chips, but it's just nice to have something with some weight to play with. Which is a sentence I don't think any of my ex-girlfriends have ever said. But having said that, I've already lost one of the chips. There's supposed to be 5 of these. And as far as I can tell, the only way to get a replacement is to either buy a whole nother Splendor game or make my own. But that's okay. I'm thinking about replacing the gem chips with real, authentic, fake plastic gems and real, authentic, fake gold coins. So, what's the word for this game?
The word is exquisite.
Yes! Perfect! Splendor is one of my favorite puzzle games. I like the mental challenge, I like the components, it's an extremely satisfying game. Exquisite is the perfect word for it. You'll have to strain your brain a little and adapt on the fly, but this is one of the most involving yet simple games I've ever come across. I can play it with or teach it to just about anybody. I've yet to teach a dog to play it, but I'm working on it.
It's simple, yet endlessly replayable. No matter what, each game is going to be different, and they have been. There's not a ton of components here, but the game design is so efficient that there doesn't really need to be. It's streamlined yet challenging. It's short but satisfying. And when you emerge victorious, they can say you're the hoitiest of the toitiest, but they can't say that you didn't work to get there. You just needed a small loan of $1 million from your dad. Although I will point out again, there's a bunch of wasted space in this box. I mean, I'm all for giving vacuum formers a job, but game publishers, space really is an issue. And now if you'll excuse me, the Duchess and I have a fancy party to go to.
But I'm the Duchess. We had planned. He stole my Duchess. But wait, I thought the Duchess and I had. He stole my Duchess.